So, where are we wanting to go? What's the place that we're wanting to end up? We want to get to the place of being able to produce great drawings. We want to be able to put on paper the amazing scenes that are in our heads, that are in our imaginations, that possibly even are in our dreams. But sometimes the drawings that we want to create, as well as being in our heads, are actually already in the sketchbooks of other artists. And so when we see their work, as well as thinking that's a great drawing, we're also thinking, wow, I really want to be able to draw just like that. That's just the style of drawing I'm after. I really want to be able to draw like this. And so what do? We really want to be able to produce our own drawings that look just like this artist's drawings. And so we think, I know how to get to that place. I know how to get to the place of being able to draw the way they draw. I'm going to copy their drawings because then I'll learn how to draw the way they draw. In this video, I want to firstly quickly explain why this is a dead end. I have a number of videos that look at copying the work of other artists, that explain in more detail why copying is not a good idea, why copying the work of other artists will not take us to the place that we want to get to. But then I want to give you some ideas. How can we use the work of artists whose work inspires us, artists who already have a style that we would love to develop our own style in that direction, to influence my work? So don't miss out on those tips at the end. But firstly, why is it so unhelpful to copy the work of artists whose work I really like? The reason why copying the work of other artists won't take us to the place we want to go is really very simple. If we stop and ask ourselves, what is the skill we practice when we copy? Well, we get skilled at copying, because whatever we practice over and over again, we get better at doing. So if I want to become very good at copying, then copying the work of other artists is a good way to do that. But if I want to develop the ability of being able to see a scene in front of me or a reference photo and to put that on paper in my own drawing, possibly a scene that no one else has ever drawn before, then copying the lines that other artists have already drawn will not have given me the skills I need to work out what lines do I want to or need to draw in the first place. Because if we think of drawing as a creative process, the real creativity happens here. It happens in our head. It happens in our thinking when we look at our subject or we look at our photo and we see something, whether it's hair, whether it's leaves on a tree, whether it's a roof, whether it's a group of people together at a bus stop, or whether it's an apple, banana and a pineapple on a table. We see something that is one thing and we need to translate it into another thing. We need to translate it onto a two-dimensional sheet of paper, which is a challenge if we're looking at something that's actually three-dimensional in front of us. But on top of that, we have to translate something from an actual real-life form in front of us into being represented with lines in some way, or possibly tone and even colour, depending on our drawing technique and materials. How do I look at something such as this, whether it's real life or in a photo, and use lines to represent this incredible detail, the light and the dark, to represent even the colour on paper? That is truly a creative process. But it's not a process we get any practice at all. How we translate those objects, sometimes thousands or millions of objects, into lines on paper when we copy the drawings of other artists, because they've already had to do that process in their mind as part of their creative process, their creative journey in drawing their drawing that I'm looking at and wanting to copy. So they've had to go through that creative process, but I'm just looking at what they've done and copying their result of that process. I don't know why they chose to draw that line or those lines to create that effect from what they were looking at. I probably don't even know what they were looking at. I'm just copying the lines that they've chosen to draw. And so, with practice doing that, I'll get better at copying lines that other people have put in place. But I won't learn
how to learn to choose what lines to use and where to put them, and even how to draw them to create a certain effect or to record a certain object. Because I've had no practice at thinking those things through, working them out. So the reason why copying the work of other artists is a dead end has got nothing to do with whether it's right or wrong or has artistic integrity or anything else. It's the simple truth. It doesn't teach me and therefore doesn't develop the skills I need to create my own artworks. And I came to understand this from all of the comments I kept getting, saying things like, I can do really good drawings when I copy other drawings, but when I go to draw my own drawing, I don't even know where to start, and it never looks as good. And this is why that's the case. But how then can I use the work of the artists whose work really does inspire me, of artists whose work I would like my work to look something more like? Is there a way I can benefit from some of the things that they have already learned? And the good news is there is. So let me show you some of the ways I benefited from looking at drawings of artists whose work really inspired me and whose drawings I wanted my drawings to look more like, but without actually copying their drawings.
So when I was trying to find and develop my drawing style, I found artists' work that I really loved, work where I thought, gee, I wish I'd drawn this. And I would look carefully at their work to find out why I liked it so much. Possibly it was the subject and the sorts of subjects that I want to draw. Grand architecture with many interesting elements for details, for shadows, for contrasts. I would look at the drawing carefully to see how has the artist created the effect that was either in front of them or in the photo. How did they create their dark on dark effect and yet still get a visible sense of the form of the objects? I might really like the way they've captured the effect of the many sculptures that we come across in grand architecture. The balance that has to be found between drawing enough detail but not too much detail. I might really like the way they've created the effect of their windows. I might really like the way they've used just very sparing amounts of tone in their drawing. Or I might like the fact that they've used a lot of tone in their drawing and the contrast between having some very close objects and further away ones. I may really like the way they use perspective in really dramatic ways. So I look at their drawings and I work out how have they created such dramatic perspective angles and views and drawn them in a way that look real. I look at the way common shapes such as arches change when we view them from an extreme angle, whether it's below or from the side. And I study the way they've captured the shadows and the shade that's created from these angles. Or I might really be inspired by the way they create a sense of depth in their drawing, of how some parts feel closer and some parts feel further away. And so I look at their line work and I study it to work out, why do these parts feel closer and why do these parts feel further away? Even when they're drawn quite close to each other on the paper, there's this sense of in space that some objects are much further back and some are much further forward. Or I may look at an extreme sense of depth in a drawing and ask myself, how have they constructed with their line, with their tone, with the things that they've chosen to draw and the things that they've chosen to not draw or to draw in barest outline, to create even more so a sense of some things are very close to us and some things are extremely far away. And we want to capture this effect of depth in our drawings. Or it may be that the work that really inspires us is because of its lovely, loose, quick, fluid, brisk style. We might like the real casual feel, the lack of precision within precision that it has. And so we need to look at that and say, well, why does it have this effect? Why do I feel it's a great balance between both looking accurate but being casual in its line work as well? I might want to really do location sketching and think that this is the sort of style that would really suit me if I was sitting in the street where I had maybe half an hour to do a drawing, where I can't measure exactly. I might like the fact that no rulers have been used, and with so many artists now posting process drawings or time-lapse drawings of their art on social media, we often don't even have to guess the answers to many of these questions because we can actually watch them produce at least parts of the drawings that so inspire us. And particularly if we have subjects that we feel we struggle with in our drawings, possibly trees or foliage, then it can be very helpful to look at the work of artists whose work we think is really effective and to say, how do they create the effect of foliage? What lines do they draw? What choices do they make with what they put on the paper? I don't want to copy their lines. I want to learn how I see a tree or a photo of a tree and learn to make these choices myself. But I can use their drawings not just to inspire me, but to actually point me in a helpful direction for process, for method. How to draw trees are some of my most popular YouTube videos. I do have a playlist on them, if it's an area that you think you could benefit from some direction in. But while I would advise very strongly, don't copy their drawings, if you're able to find their reference photo or a very similar scene, it can be very helpful to study their drawing, then put their drawing away and not look at it, and then to do our own drawing from their reference or a similar reference. And then when we've done their drawings, if there are some areas where we think the other artist's work is more what we're trying to do, we can look at those areas in particular and try and work out why. So finding similar, if not identical references gives us a chance to apply the creative choices of the artist whose work inspires us in our drawings more easily, but without actually copying line for line what they have done. We still have to do the actual translation work ourselves in our heads. We still have to look at our reference, but then sit in front of a blank sheet of paper with our pen and decide what lines we will put on the paper, where we will put them, and how we will put them, all by ourselves. And this is the truly creative part of drawing. This is actually the most difficult part. The actual drawing of the lines, once we've worked out what we want to do, certainly has technical skills needed. And how we draw those lines will largely determine what our style of drawing looks like. And it can be helpful to practice drawing skills, such as how to draw a straight line, how to draw curves, how to do cross-hatching. All of these are drawing skills, and there are techniques we can learn for those that can be helpful. But by far the most important part of the drawing process is choosing what lines I want to place where and how those lines will look. And while we can practice drawing skills and improve on them relatively quickly, working out in our head what lines we need to place where to create the effect that we want to create in our drawing is not something that really can be learned too quickly. It will take practice. And I would suggest that even if the drawings that inspire us are really detailed, that we start with simpler subjects. Similar, but simpler subjects, because it will be easier to learn the lessons of creative thinking and translating that thinking onto paper with simpler subjects first. There'll be less things we have to juggle all at once. G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Of course, I don't mind if you want to copy drawings, although in fairness, if those drawings end up in a public place, such as on social media, I think it's important to acknowledge the artist whose work was the inspiration for that drawing. But if we want to learn to create our own drawings, copying the work of other artists is a dead end, because it only develops skills in the very last stages of a drawing's process, when the most important skills all happen at the start of that drawing journey, when we're looking at our reference and trying to work out what we need to draw before we worry about how we can draw it. But whatever you're drawing and however you're drawing it, have fun. I'll see you next time. Bye.